Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Tuesday, September 29th, and we will continue discussing topics in geography. Just a quick reminder what geography is: the study of the world, its people, and the landscapes they create. Remember, there is two very important parts of geography: human and physical geography. Okay? So today's objectives, we will explain how migration influences the character of places and regions. You will then have 5 questions at the end of the lesson, and the goal is to answer at least 4 out of 5 of those questions correctly. Today's agenda, we will welcome everyone during attendance. And while we are taking attendance, I expect for you to go into your Google Classroom and complete the Do Now. You also will have morning announcements from our principal, Mr. Martinez, for the first class, and any class announcements for the rest of the classes. We will have our lesson followed by our DOL. So let's begin. How human migration influences the character of places and region. Okay, boys and girls, this is very important to understand how certain places build certain culture. So, a common cause of population change is migration. Migration is the process of moving from one place to live in another. As one country loses citizens as a result of migration, its population can decline. At the same time, another country may gain population as people settle there. So, while some people are moving from one place to another, the place that they're leaving might shrink in size based on people, but that country receiving people is going to grow in size. People migrate for many reasons. Some factors push people to leave their country, okay, while other factors pull or attract people to new countries. So there's 2 factors: a push factor, which causes people to leave their country, and a pull factor, which attracts people to a new country. Warfare, a lack of jobs, or a lack of good farmland are common push factors. Again, warfare, lack of jobs, or lack of good farmland are common push factors. These might be reasons why people leave their places that they live in. Okay? For example, during the Irish potato famine of the mid-1800s, poverty and disease forced some 1.5 million people to leave Ireland. Opportunities for better life often pull people to new countries. For example, in the 1800s and the early 1900s, thousands of British citizens migrated to Australia in search of cheap land. So, again, boys and girls, a push factor is the lack of something, like the lack of good farmland, or the lack of jobs, or because of war, poverty. And pull factors are things that attract people, like the example that I gave you: free land, better opportunity, jobs, better places to live. Okay, so today's lesson objective, 6.3b. Explain ways in which human migration influences the character of places and regions. We are going to learn why certain places are the way they are based on people's moving there, okay? And the regions. Remember, regions are areas that have climate, landforms, and things in common. Okay, so we're going to see how humans influence these areas. Okay, so when we talk about influence, we could be talking about culture. Remember, culture has anything to do with our everyday life. What kind of music do people listen to? How do they dress? What foods are they enjoying? What beliefs, like religion beliefs, their education, the art. So all these are cultural influences. But then we're also going to look at some influences maybe by economic reasons. Remember, economy has to do anything with money, okay? Money, 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 money. And, or maybe because of certain landforms. Remember, people look for certain areas that are going to help them out with their farming, climate. We want to be in places that we're going to be comfortable. So we're going to look at all of these aspects of migration, and that is our lesson objective. So we have a video of vocabulary, and if you were not able to join our class today, this is a time that you can pause this and go ahead and watch this video on your own and listen to it. Pay close attention to the vocabulary that it mentions, okay, because it talks about migration, it talks about influences, why people move, different types of migration, forced migration, migration for better opportunities, that push and pull factor. So take the time to watch this video. Okay, European migration. The European migration to the region where USA and Canada stand today from 1492 to 1600, slightly less than half of all immigrants or migrants were British. Okay, North America is the third largest continent by size. The Americas have been referred to as the New World. Although already populated by indigenous people, Europe, the Old World, saw the Americas as ripe for colonization. The goals of European colonization were to increase territory and profit from North America's natural resources. Okay, so again, natural resources having to do like with the landforms, for that physical geography aspect. Conflict was common both between rivaling colonial powers and between European and indigenous populations. And colonist cultures influenced the development of country or region even after gaining independence. Okay, so the colonist cultures influenced the development of the country. So their beliefs, their everyday life practices influence this new world. And remember, even though it's referred to as the New World, it was already populated by indigenous people. And remember, if you watch that vocabulary video, it talked about how some people were forced to move. So when these people started settling in, the indigenous people were forced to move or migrate further west or south, depending on where they were located, because these new people were coming in. Okay, continuing with European migration. Okay, so the European migration to the region in the 1600th century resulted in limited government. So, if they were searching for limited government, remember we talked about limited and unlimited government. So they wanted the power of the government for them not to have total power. They wanted to be able to have some say-so as citizens. They wanted some rights. So they were looking for some limited government. Because of the influences of culture, widespread use of English and French, and the spread of Christian religious practices to the region. So when they migrated over to the New World, they brought all these cultural aspects. Okay, so the cultural aspects being the language and the religion, and the government being the political aspect, what they were searching for. And when we talk about the landforms and the regions, remember, natural resources influence the economy. So they were looking also for good natural resources. They also influence the settlement. The earliest settlers may have immigrated for religious freedom, but later many people immigrated for the economic opportunities available in North America. So even though at first they were in search of a new political ways and new cultural, that they wanted freedom of religion and to be able to practice their daily beliefs. Later, when things got settled and when they were doing good, they were looking for better opportunity as far as money. Okay, when the Industrial Revolution started, immigration to the northeastern United States was high. As transportation developed, the population increased in other areas. Booms in population follow industrial growth. Okay, and I have also included another video here that you can pause my speaking and take the time to watch this video. Okay, our next term is forced migration. So remember that I mentioned previously that when people settled into the New World, there were people already living here, the indigenous people, and those people were forced. Now, those were not the only group of people that were forced to migrate. Forced migration means to be moved without your own will. So, forced migration of enslaved Africans to the region is reflected in the cultural practices and demographics of the region. So, another group of people that were also forced were Africans. They were forced to board ships and travel to the New World against their will to work farmlands or other types of jobs. There were some black people that were here and had migrated previously, but some of them, even though they were not slaves, were still treated unfairly. Okay, I've included a YouTube video here that you may watch. We will also go more into the term of forced migration when we look at the vocabulary words that are in there. But I also wanted to mention once again what the term forced migration means and the two people that were directly affected by the settlement of the New World. Okay, so again, we have talked about the old world being Europe, migrating to the New World being what is now the United States, and how people came seeking, religious freedom, change of political aspects. They influence regions with their cultural backgrounds. But once that region of the 13 colonies was settled, people were still migrating elsewhere. Okay, so at one point, there was the westward migration. So the westward migration across the United States and Canada influenced the image of rugged people who survived adverse circumstances. And even though it might seem simple because, they didn't have to board a ship and cross an ocean, cross the Atlantic Ocean to come over, it was still rough. People had to have good food and certain resources because migrating to these places could easily cost a family thousands of dollars. And back then, that was a lot of money. Okay, so that is a big misconception when you think, oh, it was so easy for people to move. But in reality, most pioneers were poor and desperate. You had to have at least somewhat successful in order to move west, since the food and supplies for the trip cost several thousands of dollars. So it was not an easy migration just because they were within land and they did not have to board a ship. It was still a hard transition. And we will look at this more carefully by watching a BrainPop video and discussing some things, some terms. So this is a good time to pause. This will more than likely conclude our first day of World Cultures for the day. And don't forget to complete the DOL at the end of this part. So even if you were not present, this video should help guide you in the order of things that we did, what videos we watched. I will also include some classroom activities that you should go into your Google Classroom and look at this week's dates and go ahead and complete those activities. I hope you enjoyed today's lessons, videos, and I hope that the words that we go through and the classroom activities give you a better understanding of migration and the influence that people have had. We will continue discussing the topic in other aspects on Thursday.